Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic is new mammals of the Neotropics, and we have a wonderful team of presenters today. First is Marcus Brandão, a doctoral student and researcher in zoology from São Paulo, and his elder brother, Elder Brandão, who is one of our wonderful expedition leaders. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you very much for your hard work. Thank you all for being here to give this opportunity of this webinar. Today's panelist is from São Paulo University, a researcher from the Museum of Zoology, and he is dedicated to mammals, natural history, and conservation. Well, in the first webinar of this series, I mentioned that as a biologist, I was a bad influence to my family. So my brother and my sister became biologists too. Well, today the scientist invited here is my brother, my real brother. So Marcus, thank you very much for being here. I'm really happy to do this together with you. And well, ladies and gentlemen, he brought very interesting topic. Discovering new species of medium and large size mammals and how it's linked to the safari drives in South America. So how about that? Marcus, thank you again. Please, if you introduce yourself and start your talk, we are happy to hear.
Well, I am the one who needs to thank. I'm very glad to be here talking to Natural Habitats and you, my older brother. So I'm gonna talk about mammals, which is my specialty. But today I'm gonna talk about some specific mammals, the ones that occur here in South America, and in a specific region that I will show you in a bit. And we're gonna talk about the large size mammals, right? So let's go. You may ask any questions at the end of the presentation. I will talk slowly because my English is not as good as Elder, but I'll do my best. So this is the topic, the 21st century's diversity of neotropical mammals. So let's go. First of all, I'm gonna talk about a database that is online, which is called Mammal Diversity Database, which the American Society of Mammalogy has updated each month. So we now have a better knowledge on how much species of mammals are there. Currently, there are 6,500 about species of mammals. So this is a quite large number, and this number has actually increased about 20% since the last updated list. That is from 2005. You can see here the number was about 5,400 species. So that's a lot of species that has been described in the last few years. So I'm gonna talk about some of them. But before that, I would like to show this picture to you, this graphic that shows that mammals are distributed all along the planet. So we've got different regions on the planet with different diversity of mammals. So we can see here that the regions in blue or greenish colors are the ones with lower diversity of mammals, and the ones with yellow and orange and reddish colors are the ones with greater diversity. So we can see that the tropical regions here in South America, and Central America, and in Africa, and Indonesia has actually the largest numbers of mammals. So this is the largest, this is the most diverse regions of the planet regarding mammals. So we're gonna talk about a specific region, that is the Neotropical region. So we divide the world in sub-regions that are specific mammals that occurs there and only there. So we're gonna talk about the Neotropical region, which is this region right here that includes most of South America and Central America. So we're gonna talk about mammals in that region. Elder, please, if you have any questions, let me know.
Cool.
So talking about the diversity in Neotropical region, in 2005, the database showed that we had recognized 1,000 and about 200 species. So today, we are over 1,000 and we are near 1,700 species of mammals, which is a lot. So that has increased about 33%, something like that, and we increase every year that number. So the Neotropical region is actually the region that the most of mammals, both the newly mammals recognized are from. So in this graphic, I can show here all these different regions that I mentioned in the previous slides, and we can see that Neotropical region is the most diverse, and there is the most of the newly recognized species occurs here. So this darker gray bars here shows that. So we got two categories of newly recognized species. So we got species that we give a new name to them. So for example, we go to a previously not studied area like Amazon, somewhere in Amazon, we discover a new population, we give a new name for that population. So that is a new species. But we also have got some examples that we split some species that were once one single species into 2 or 3 or 4 or more species. So some species have some subspecies recognized that we now call them full species. So there's these 2 types of new species that we are mentioning here. So
that number is pretty high, right? I mean, the number of species is pretty high. Like this represents almost 40% of the neotropic mammal species increase in this period you're showing. So how does the species increase happen? How does it happen? The classification work?
Okay, that is a very good question that we're going to answer in the next slide. So during all the years of study of mammals, we initially were studying only morphology. So like 300 years ago, we only had morphology. We didn't have DNA or techniques to access DNA. So we had this phylogenetic tree that represents the genetic relationship between species or groups of species. So for example, we've got here this phylogenetic tree that shows the different groups of mammals. So we've got here these bluish groups that based on morphology are related to each other. So this as an example, we can take these guys right here that refers to rodents and rabbits. So any person can see that rabbits and rodents are very alike in morphology. So when we've got new techniques of DNA, we could show that this is true. Rodents and rabbits are related, so they are here in color blue, right? But not always we had this type of agreement. So we can see these different groups here in red that were previously in different groups, but now they are together here in the tree based on DNA. So DNA has enabled us to describe several new species. So that's why we got so many new species right now. So answering to your question. But not only that, we still go on the field like Amazon, on the Andes, on several other regions from South America, and we discover new species right on the field. So there's these 2 ways of discovering new species. Okay, so
to summarize that graphic here, it is a phylogenetic tree, which can be said that it's an animal family tree that is based on morphologic and genetic features. So of all those animals, right?
Exactly. That's what we do now. We still use morphology, but based also on DNA.
Cool. Yeah, cool.
Okay, so let's go. So I'm using this graph right here to show the diversity of mammals in Brazil, but actually what I want to show you is that proportion between the diversity of each group of mammals. So let's take rodents, for instance, here. So we got rodents here, which is the largest mammal group of mammals regarding diversity. So we got in Brazil 263 species. That's a lot of species. And we got some other small groups, actually small mammals, that has a lot of species, like bats and marsupials. So if we put these three groups together, that's about 2/3 of the diversity in mammals of Brazil. That's a lot of things, a lot of species. And most of them are species recently described. So most of the recently described species are, in fact, small mammals. And this has occurred for over the last 200 years, right? Because we thought we knew who were the largest mammals. So for about 200 years, we know that there's only one type of tapir in Brazil, only type of jaguar, and so forth. So what I'm gonna bring you here today is that this vision is now changing. So many researchers are focusing on larger mammals. So I'm not gonna talk about rodents or bats. Actually, I'm gonna talk about rodents, but only specific groups of rodents, the larger ones. So I'm not gonna talk about bats or marsupials or even primates, because primates still are the large mammals that still has increased in diversity over the years. So every year we got a new species of monkey, mostly within Amazon. So we still know very little about this group. Okay, so I'm gonna focus this presentation on these guys right here on the top of the slide. Okay.
Cool.
So the first one. Oh, hi, Elder. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. So may I go on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna talk about the anteaters and eaters and sloth. So this is a typical group from South America, from Neotropical region, actually. So the major diversity is within this continent, with only few species that reaches northern South America, with some sloths, right? In northern South America, I believe. But the diversity of this group was thought to be very low, with only a single species of the giant anteater, which is this guy right here, the lesser anteater, only one single species, and a few species of sloth. So actually, I'm gonna talk about this guy here, which is the silky anteater, which is the smallest tamandua in the world and is the cutest one also. I don't think you are gonna see another cute animal like this in this presentation. This is very cute. This animal actually fits in your hand. So we knew very little about the species, about its ecology and other data. We believe that it were only a single species distributed in Central America and Northern South America, mostly in Amazon. But we know that there is morphological variation in the species. So you can see here in these photos, there's a dark stripe in the venter of this animal. There's a dorsal darker stripe, and in this individual here, there's no stripe at all. So there were morphological variation on the specimens that a group of researchers recently has studied a lot, and together with DNA, so that's those phylogenetic trees we talked about earlier, they reached a conclusion that is actually 7 species of silky anteater. So that's a lot of new species. So this is the previous distribution of this animal, reaches Central America and Northern South America, mostly in Amazon. But these different colors refers to these 7 new species. So we've got some species with a really small distribution now, like this one in orange and this one in pink, that we actually don't know nothing about. So if you're gonna go to this to do some safari and you want to see this type of tamandua, you have to go to several places to see all the species now. So that's great. That I don't believe this will happen again in mammalogy of South America. This great increase in number of species from 1 to 7. This is quite new information, and we know now nothing about most of the species.
Yeah.
So the next group I'm going to talk about is the armadillos. We got several species here, like the giant armadillo, the 3-banded armadillo, and the 6-banded armadillo. And we got this guy here that most of you in North America must know, that is the 9-banded armadillo. It's the only armadillo that reaches North America. So it has quite large distribution. But a group of researchers has studied this armadillo and its relatives, so they reached some very interesting conclusions. So I'm going to talk about the greater long-nosed armadillo, which is related to that one that is most common, the 9-banded armadillo. But this is a larger version of this animal, so this is much larger than the 9-banded armadillo. This species actually occur mostly in Amazon, but it once thought to be a single species is now two. So it's another example of newly recognized mammals. I believe there will be another new species of this type of armadillo described in the next few years. So wait for that in the next few years. The other armadillo I'm going to talk about is this guy right here, which used to be called southern naked-tailed armadillo. And you can see the naked tail right here. This is a smaller armadillo. But well, this species was considered to be a single species, but now it's considered to be two, with distribution mostly in Amazon. This pinkish distribution right here, and the one in green, it's another species. So they are called now Amazon naked-tailed armadillo and the Cerrado naked-tailed armadillo. So we see now at least 2 new species of armadillo. So I believe it will be some others.
Oh yeah, that data is fantastic, because it just told us that if we go on an AdHab trip to the Amazon, we could maybe see 6 extra species of silky anteaters and 2 extra species of armadillos. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, the safaris must change. And any news about finding slots?
Yeah, I believe there will be some novelties within slots in the next few years. I don't know actually if there's some researchers focusing on that right now, but the knowledge we got so far is that there is some morphological variation within the species known so far, as well as genetic diversity. It's quite relative. So someone has to focus on these animals, and we see how much species there are. But I believe it will be some of it in the next few years. So we can go to the next group.
Yep.
Which is the tapirs, right? On Brazil, we've got only one species of tapir, the Brazilian tapir, which is this guy right here on the right. So recently, some researchers has developed a research on Amazonia and described a new species of tapir, which is a huge, great news, right? But the scientific community is still debating on the validity of this new species of tapir. These researchers based on DNA and also morphological evidence. So this guy right here is a bit smaller than this one. It's a little bit darker and has some degree of genetic diversity. But the scientific community is still debating on the validity of this species, right? So we need to see if this species is still valid or not. But I can say that I am not. I believe that if we research more areas like Amazon or the Andes, where several locations were not yet studied, it's not that hard to believe that it may find new species of tapirs. So we've got today like 4 species known so far. So let's see about that. But the fact is that about 80 years ago, researchers described a new species of tapir. So the next group I'm going to talk about is Cetaceans and even-toed ungulates, which are these guys right here, dolphins and peccaries and deers. So it's hard to believe that Cetaceans are related to peccaries and deers, but actually DNA has shown this for a long time now, for a couple of decades now, and the fossil record had already shown that for us. So the fossil of cetaceans actually descend from terrestrial mammals. So this is actually quite well accepted now that these forms are related. So, but I'm gonna actually talk about new species within this group, starting with the Uruguayan river dolphin, which, as the name says, a dolphin that lives on rivers. So this animal is actually from the Amazon. This finding is amazing to me because we know for a long time that there are dolphins on rivers within Amazon, but only recently, only less than 10 years ago, these new species were recognized. So we had to take a group of researchers taking DNA and several other methods of evaluation to reach the conclusion that it's a new species. And this species is probably very threatened of conservation, as most of river dolphins all over the world. So this is quite impressive to me. I'm not gonna talk about much more about dolphins because it's not my specialty, but this finding is quite striking. It's quite amazing to mention. So the other one I'm gonna talk about is the Hilly Dolphin, which I believe Elder will talk about in a few webinars ahead with specialists on this group. But I just would like to say that the Hilly dolphins were previously attributed to the bottlenose dolphins. So, but actually the Hilly dolphins has a much smaller distribution that we can see this here on this map, restricted to southern Brazil, Uruguay, and northern Argentina. So this species is also poorly known and probably threatened of conservation. So I believe Elder will have some news on that species in a while, right, Elder? So the next group we're going to talk about are the deers and brockets. So previously, we believe that there were 2 groups of deers and brockets here in South America that were related to each other. So this branched antler deer here, all the species with this type of antlers were related to each other, and we believe that this type of brockets with a single antler were related to each other, but this actually is not true. Several species of this type of brocket are actually more related to this type of animal than to the other types of deers and brockets. So the new information here concerning brockets is that the genetic diversity is huge. So mostly within this group right here, which we call Mazama, which is the genus of this type of brockets. So this is actually in Pantanal where Elder works mostly. These animals are somewhat easier to see. But when you go in Amazon or Atlantic forest, it's very hard to see brockets. They are very elusive animals. You see them for just a couple of seconds. The variation in pelage, in fur, are great. So we can still have some difficulties in identifying these species. But researchers has developed a technique that is great. So they train dogs to go after scats or feces of brackets, so by smell, right? And they can take a sample of these fishes and take DNA and see how much the diversity is actually referred to the diversity of brackets in South America. So based on DNA, we can say that there are several new species to be recognized in the near future. So be aware of that, pay attention in that. I can't say any more data because I don't have it. So researchers are still digging up on this issue, but I believe about 5 to 6 species, new species will be recognized in the future. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to see in deers and brackets in all over South America, all over the Neotropical region, not only in Brazil.
All right, I was out of the webinar, got some technical problems, but I'm back to the best, I think the best time now, one of the most excited groups, right? The carnivorous.
For sure, these are very iconic animals. Everyone doing safari wishes to see them. I'm not that different, although I like other mammals, but when I see a jaguar, it's quite amazing. So, but I'm not gonna talk about jaguars. I'm gonna talk about some other felines, some other type of carnivores. So we have here felines, the raccoon family, the canid family, the skunk family, and the ferrets family. So I'm gonna talk about few examples within these guys, but I believe that this group also we believe that it was well known, but it's not the case for some of them. Let me show you here. The first topic I'm going to talk about is about olingos. Probably most of you don't know olingos. This is a animal not very easy to see. It's restricted mostly to Amazon, but also occurs in the Andes. It's a medium-sized carnivore. You can see here near a person, only to see the size of the animal. So I'm showing this picture. This is the western lowland olingo. But actually, I'm going to talk about another species of olingo, which occurs here on this region, which refers to the Andean mountain. So in Colombia and Ecuador, this is a new species of mammal, which is this guy right here called Olingito. And the name is actually because it's a small species of olingo which were described a few years ago. So this is quite amazing because it had been about, I don't know, 150 years that no other carnivore were described. So when this happened, it was a great news. So be aware of that. We got the olingo in the Andes for us to see. This is a quite cute animal. If you Google it, you'll find some videos, some new information, because it was a quite impressive finding. The other carnivore I'm going to talk about is the Ancilla, which is this small cat, spotted cat right here, which we believe that it was on a single species distributed on a large portion of South America, as we're going to see next. So this is the distribution. We come from the Central America right here up to Atlantic forest here in Brazil. But researchers have reached a conclusion that there were 3 morphotypes of this type of feline, this small cat. So actually this refers to 3 species. We can see now the 3 patterns of fur on the species. We can see a more orange type one, a brighter one, somewhat a whitish one, and a yellowish one. So we now call them 3 different species: the northern tigrina, the eastern tigrina, and the southern tigrina. So the DNA has also shown that these species are valid species. So we got from one single species to 3. And one of them, the eastern tigrina, occurs only here in Brazil. This is the only endemic feline from Brazil. So quite impressive data.
Yeah, we got a lot of new species now to see in Brazil, right? To see cats in Brazil. And actually, Marcus brought here some video, but is not able to see. How about you pass to the picture? That's a very
We tried the video, but the video was too slow, so I'm gonna show you a picture. So this is the southern tigrina. This is a picture of a study I did here in Minas Gerais state in Brazil, southern Brazil. This is a quite rare animal to see. I've seen only once in the wild. So this was quite impressive footage we have got from the species. This actually is a puppy. The mother has just passed on the camera, so unfortunately we can't see her. But we have a lot of video from these two individuals that probably lived near this region where we put the camera. So it's quite an impressive mammal to see. It's a small
I have never seen this in the wild. Never seen this in the wild, just in camera traps, and even so, it's pretty hard to catch them. But yeah, I think it's not over, right? You brought more cats.
Yeah, it's another cat here to show, and this is what a quite impressive one. This is the Pantanal or the Pampas cat, or known from other regions with some other names. But we believe now that it refers to several species. That it was once considered one single species. Some researchers consider 2 species, other 3 species. Well, it's very hard to know. It was very hard to know how many species were there, because this animal is actually even rarer to see than the tigrina, the Ancilla, that we showed the previous slide. So in Chile and Argentina, there's some sightings, but here in Brazil, it's much more harder to see. But we can see that there is some morphological variation only in these 2 photos I'm showing here. This is a photo from Brazil, and this is a photo from Argentina. So we can see there's some difference in this fur of these animals. So a group of researchers has studied these animals using both morphology and DNA sequences. So they reached the conclusion that is actually there is actually 5 species. So this is great news for cats, right? This is I don't remember another case like this. So we've got from one single species with a large distribution here, as we can see here on these colored dots. But we have got now some species with a really small distribution, like this one in Chile, Leopardus colo-cola. Here's in Chile, it's quite small distribution, and the one here in Uruguay and southern Brazil. So probably these species are threatened of conservation, right? Have you seen this animal out there?
Actually, it's so amazing because I have seen once the Pantanal cat in the Pantanal. So the black dots there in the map represents these species, and it's interesting to consider that species is different from the other in the yellow triangle down there, which is another area where I lead not have trips to, which is Patagonia. So now maybe we can see more species in South America. So if you look in IUCN red list of threatened species, this is not updated yet. So you're bringing now some fresh data.
Yeah, that's an interesting question you have just brought up. So these species are not in IUCN red list yet, but the previous one I showed on the previous slide, there. So both of them are probably considered as threatened. So this is great news for cats, right? We've got new cats here in South America, almost 2 4 in this. So 6 new species of cats in South America, which is great. I've never seen this one either. Neither 5 of them.
Let's try to see it all.
All right. So let's go talk about now rodents. As I said in the initial presentation, rodents are still the group of mammals which most of new species are described. So this is still true, but mostly for the small ones like Mickey Mouse size, you know. But actually I'm going to talk about the larger ones like capybara and the porcupines and other types of rodents, large rodents. So I'm going to show some examples here of large rodents that are new to science. So the first one I'm going to mention is this guy right here, which is the Pernambuco dwarf porcupine, recently described from a region of northern Atlantic forest, which is this region right here in Brazil, northern Brazil. We can see that is very they're very much, actually there's only few remnants of forest remaining in this area, so this species is as threatened as it's new to science. So it's probably threatened, as there's nothing left here in Atlantic forest of northeastern Brazil.
Yeah. Well,
the other
exactly, yeah. The next one, I mean, it's quite interesting because you're talking about porcupine, and the next one is the one we see in the Pantanal, which it was at least called the Brazilian porcupine, right? So tell us what happened to this species.
So, okay, let's talk about the Brazilian porcupine, which is this guy right here. This photo is from Elder from Pantanal. This is an animal not very easy to see. I've seen it only a few times. It spends most of its time on the trees, so despite being a large mammal, it's not very easy to see. But actually, sometimes these animals appear. This is not a great picture, but it's only to show that it shows even in houses in great cities. So even in animals that live near cities, we don't know nothing about some of them. So I'm going to show you here this map. So the Brazilian porcupine actually were believed to occur all over this area. All these dots refer to porcupine, Brazilian porcupine records, but this guy right here is now restricted to the northern portion of the Atlantic forest in Brazil. So the Brazilian porcupine is now restricted to this area. This is based on morphological and genetic evidence. So the Brazilian porcupine is actually very restricted and probably is threatened of conservation. And we got this new species described here, which is the purple one here in this area, not very large area. We call this species the Baturité porcupine. It's a new species recently described. And this bluish and reddish dots here refer to a single species that we consider that has 2 subspecies. So has a larger distribution. So these guys are here. We call them long-tail porcupine. For now, they are called a single species, but who knows in the near future if these 2 subspecies will be elevated to species and we got actually 2 new species. We see about that in the next few years. So this is great news for porcupines regarding its diversity, but we can see that some of them are actually threatened, and we now need to go to several places to see these newly recognized mammals. So let's go ahead for another rodent. This is a agouti, a recent described species called Yaquis red runt agouti, also described from the northern Atlantic forest. So this is like a hotspot for new species of mammals. So mostly rodents, but also another types of mammals. we can talk about that in another opportunity. But what I want to show here to you is that most of these newly recognized newly species are probably threatened of conservation. So the next group of rodents I'm going to talk about is squirrels. I don't even have another slide to show you about squirrel because we know nothing about them. Nothing, virtually nothing about ecology of squirrels in South America. This group is better known in North America, in Europe, but here in South America, we barely remember that there are squirrels, but there are actually a lot of species of squirrels, mostly within Amazon and the Andes. And there are several new species to be described and several new genus actually to be described, because there are some researchers that are now focusing on these mammals, and there are some recently published works that shows this great diversity in species and genetic variation too also. So if you're gonna do some safaris here in South America, and this is a news for the bird watchers, please photograph squirrels. They actually are more active on daylight, so different from most of mammals, except for primates. But most of mammals are nocturnal mammals. So, but squirrels are actually active during daylight. So when you see this during this bird watching, please photograph squirrels. We have hardly any photos of them, and in Amazon there are great species with great fur variation, with some dark pelage, like blackish pelage actually, some reddish forms, and many others type of fur. So please tell us more about squirrel. Elder, please, photos of squirrels, right?
Yes. Sure.
And that's all I can say about squirrels. We hardly know them here in South America. And the last one I'm going to talk about is rabbits. So this is the Brazilian rabbit, which this map shows here in 2008 with the data from UCN. That is a wide distributed species with a large range distribution, mostly in South America and also in Central America. But this animal lacked studies for several decades, and the recent years, like 5 years up to now, there were some articles focusing on the diversity of this small rabbit. It's a very cute animal, but there's actually, I don't even know how to say how many species are there now in South America. This is brand new information. We hardly know their distribution. This is an approximation of their distribution. So this type of mammal here, I lived here at last for us to talk about, because some of these species are already in UCN classification and some of them are severely critical in danger. So some populations like this one here in northern Atlantic forest, which is the Civilagos brasiliensis, the Brazilian habitat, is now restricted to northern Atlantic forest also, like the rodents I showed in the previous slides. So we don't know nothing about rabbits. We don't know how many species are there, where they occur, and probably there will be something like similar to the tamandua, the silky anteater tamandua that I showed earlier, which passed from one species to 7. This probably will happen in rabbits, about 1 species to, I don't know, 8, 9 species. We still don't know. So to sum up, I shown here to you several groups of large-sized mammals like anteaters, rabbits, rodents, cats, deers, even cetaceans like dolphins. So there are several new species here in South America, and I believe this will influence the safaris that you do by natural habitats. So I hope this will provide new information for you, so you can come back here in Brazil several times to see these newly mammals, not only in Brazil, but in Bolivia, in Peru, and several other countries in Argentina, several other regions in South America to see these mammals. So
yeah, I mean, it's so important to classify the species, as you are saying, and how it's important to know them, to study them, to know the status, the conservation status. So please, this is related to your work. Tell us the last work you did actually, and how it's linked to conservation and tourism.
yeah, okay. So I wrote a book. I'm gonna show you to you right after. So I just want you to remember all those cases that we mentioned of newly recognized mammals within South America, but several of them were in Patagonia and in Amazon, and most of them actually are from Atlantic forest of the northern portion of Brazil. So the work I'm gonna talk about is actually refers to this biome, which is the Atlantic forest. So I wrote a book about mammals from Atlantic forest. There's a list of species of mammals that occur on this biome, and the book refers also to a skull atlas. So the intention of this book is to help researchers to identify mammals, and to students and professors in universities in their class, in their studies, to show the diversity in the skull of mammals, which we use for identifying mammals. And I believe this will also be very useful to you in your travels in safaris here in South America, when you see this type of material in the field. So let me show you some pages.
It will be very important. Once I was in Patagonia in a trip, and there was some very special ladies that were researchers actually, and guides as well, and they were specialists on identifying animals by the skull. So I mean, I have learned a lot from them actually, and now this book can actually help a lot.
Oh, great. Glad to hear it. So just to finish, this is the Atlantic forest, this gray color right here. But I want to show you some of the pages of the book. Oh, sorry. So this is the pages of the book. This is our plates that shows the skull of all genus of mammals within Atlantic forest. So the book is actually in Portuguese and in English, so foreigners from Brazil may actually be interested in receiving this book. So we've got this book to free download on the internet, this link right here. You can also Google it. You will find like really easy on my ResearchGate, the PDF, so you can download it. But the ones that wants a printed copy can access this link and ask for a printed copy. So if you have any troubles with that, you may contact Erica, which is the co-author of my book. And the book is very it's interesting to comment, that is easy to bring it in the field. That is quite small. The pages are actually very easy to turn. Let me show the book. I forgot to pick it up, so wait just a second.
All right, I'm having some trouble with my camera, but that's all right. The important is to hear Marcus.
So this is the book right here, the hard page, and it's also both in English and in Portuguese, right? So those who are interested, please contact us or download the book on the internet. So thank you very much for this presentation, Elder and Natural Habitat folks. And I would like to thank the institutions support me with my research. So thank you very much. You may ask any question. I will try to answer them all. So you can follow me in Instagram. I'm not very active in Instagram these days, but I will do it in the future. I promise.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you both. Before we start the Q&A, I want to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the questions field in your control panel. But we already do have some great questions, so we'll get started right away. Here's a good one to start off with, just to set the scene. Is the species still defined as a group of animals within which they can breed and produce fertile offspring, or what's a simple way to define species as it is thought of today?
Whoa, this is actually a quite hard to answer question. So there are a lot of different types of answer to that. So each researcher has one type of how can I say the word in English?
Concept?
Criteria. Yeah, concepts. So I'm not gonna talk about too much this concept, but this concept of breeding is quite hard to define in species that we hardly know nothing about. So like, for example, like small rodents, they live about 2 years. We've got like over 1,000 species of rodents, which some are really rare to see and to capture or to study, or we got hardly any data on this species. So how are we gonna say that these species are breeding with each other, with other populations? It's quite hard to do that. So at least in mammals, what is common to use is to see the morphology, if there's difference in morphology to some population or other, if this variation in morphology is associated with genetic variation on DNA sequences, and where does this species occur. So the main job I have is to see that this morphological, the genetic variance, and to describe where this species occur. So this occur only on the high mountains of the Andes, or only the northern portion of the Atlantic forest, So we got to use several data to come up with a result that we can say this is a new species, or these two separate species are actually one single species. This is the type of work I do. So I hope this work will continue so I don't get jobless.
Can you remind us of the number of new species again?
Of larger
that you shared with us in your
mammals.
presentation. Yeah.
So it's about, let me remember here. It's
5,000.
Yeah, let me show the first slide. So we got over 6,000 species now recognized. We passed from 5,400 species to over 600,000.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. All right, here's
like 1,000 species more.
Wow. All right, so here's a specific one, and forgive me if I don't pronounce it correctly, but is the Olingito related to the mongoose?
Not actually. They're more related to the raccoons and the coati family. Raccoons are more common on Northern America, so I believe it's a good example.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Here's another one. Is the dwarf porcupine found near Iguazu Falls?
No. Actually, the Iguazu Falls is much southier than the distribution of this porcupine. So most of the newly rodents I mentioned here are from the northern portion of the Atlantic forest. Let me show you here the last slides. Wait a second. Here. So this porcupine and several other porcupines and rodents were described from here, and the iguazu are here, so they are quite far away. But I can say that we don't know how much species of mammal occur on this region. It's actually this region in western Brazil, like the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, is the region that I study most. Actually, in my doctorship, I am studying mammals from this region, the region that is within the limits of Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay. So I can tell you that there are some new species of mammals in this area also. I don't know about larger mammals. I'm actually now studying smaller ones, but certainly this Iguazu region is a region we know very little.
Got it. So what are the predators for porcupines and sloths?
Oh, porcupines, I don't think there are much predators. Maybe some larger felines like pumas and jaguars, but they are really hard to catch. They have this fur turned into spines that it protects them. But we've got some species that are some porcupine species that the fur are softer. So I believe some carnivores can actually predate this species. But I believe mostly the juveniles individuals.
Sure. Maybe owls. Yeah.
Maybe owls, yeah. We don't know.
Interesting. Okay. So here's a tricky one. The reason why so many new species are being discovered, does it have anything to do with the fact that habitat is being destroyed and the animals are more visible? Or do you have some other explanations for why these animals are being discovered, so many of them?
It's a good question, a tricky one, but I believe no. I believe most of mammals are being described from region we hadn't studied yet, like Amazon. So the Amazon is quite large, and we discover new primates all the time, new marsupials, new rodents all the time. But the northern portion of Atlantic forest, which refers to several of the mammals I described here, are actually very fragmented. But this is the new species we recognize today are actually derived from new techniques, so like DNA and new research on the field and new concepts, within zoology, because we believe that larger mammals like cats were well known, at least regarding their diversity. So we believe that there's only one type of puma, and that's it. For 200 centuries, that was believed. But now researchers has a different eye for these different techniques. So we're restudying things that we believe were one single species. But we now see that there's genetic diversity, there's morphological diversity, and that's the reason why we are now recognizing so many species.
Cool.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, I think that's the last question we have time for today. So I'll hand it back to you guys for any closing comments.
Thank you. Also, again, Sunny, thank you all for being here. And Marcus, thank you again. It was really great and really proud to see your work and everything you have done. So thank you again. I hope we can do this more time. And if you want to say goodbye to others.
Oh, it's my pleasure to talk to my brother about science, to talk about the research I do with mammals. I love to talk about mammals. We got several topics we can talk about, and it's a pleasure to know you guys from Natural Habitat. So it was great to me to be here today. So I'm very glad.
Thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure to listen in today. Thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in. Please join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.